proper way of reading the X-ray, bone tumors followed by metabolic bone disorders, infective, inflammatory, traumatic dislocation type, I will try to cover. So originality is the art of concealing your source. But my today's resources for the content of this class, they are as here. My sister, Dr. Surgeon Commander Isha Rajput, Dr. Jayant Sharma sir, Dr. Shivananda sir, Dr. AJ Thakur sir, all our joints family, faculties, various classes, and of course, Baba Google. So today's class, I will be covering under these 8 heads. In those first 4, I will try to cover with giving reasoning or justification for particular findings. And if time permits, then rest of the 4 topics I will just touch upon. Historical perspective of these X-rays. A German professor in Würzburg University, Germany, named Wilhelm Conrad Roentgen and Cook's tubes. So he realized while doing that, some invisible rays were coming from the tube that were passing through the cardboard to make the screen glow. And that's how the discovery of X-rays happened, and day was November 8, 1895. For this great discovery in 1901, first Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to this great scientist. So when Roentgen held a piece of lead paper in front of electron discharge tube, in between the screen and the discharging tube, he placed this lead piece. And to his surprise, rays were blocked, but the hand in which he lead piece was holding, bones and flesh around it was appeared as a fluorescent behind the screen. So what he did, he now kept between his hand and the screen a photographic film, and that's how first image of X-ray in the world of his own hand came into existence. So what is the principle of these X-rays as far as we medical people are concerned? X-rays penetrate different objects more or less according to their density. So calcium in a human body is more denser. So bones absorb more radiation, and that's why the radiographic films, they show X-rays, these bones more denser or radio dense. And that's how in medicine, X-rays use was started for taking the images of bones and other structures in the human body. When it started for the first time for medical use, so for locating the bullets in the wounded soldiers' bodies, 10 months, 8 to 10 months after the discovery, in the battlefield physicians, they started using. This radiograph is of course a CT scan. While I was working in Syria in 2017 in a war zone, a 17-year-old boy got bullet injury, entry of wound in the left axilla, and he was quadriplegic. You can see up to C3, C4 level junction, this bullet is in the canal. So that's how basically to find the bullets in the body of wounded soldiers, the use of X-ray started in the history. Of course, use of X-rays is not without having any adverse effect. And these adverse effects or radiation sickness, usually we need to avoid, and best way is shield it, means attenuate or reduce the exposure of your radiation by using some protective garments around the body. And subsequently, this plexiglass and lead, these two objects were found to be shielding or absorbing the radiations but not letting pass through it. So what is lead? Is a soft, malleable and corrosion resistant material. Its high density makes it suitable for shielding purpose, for X-rays as well as gamma radiation. In pure form, it is brittle and it cannot be converted into wearable aprons or materials. To transform it, it need to be mixed with binders and additives so that flexible lead vinyl sheets are prepared. And these lead sheets are then laid as per the desired thickness to achieve the required lead equivalency and incorporated into radiation shielding garment. Apart from lead, tin, antimony, tungsten, and bismuth are also used for the same purpose. The lead, mixture of lead and other lighter, lead is heavier one. So when it is mixed with other composites, up to 25%, its weight comes down and it becomes less cumbersome to wear these protective shields. So I have already mentioned these 4 other metals as a non-lead radiation shielding materials are there. Non-lead aprons and lead-free aprons are recyclable and safe for non-hazardous disposal also. So X-rays, 3 shielding materials are there. One is X-ray for X-ray protection, standard lead, lead composite, and non-lead materials. Radiation shielding garments are generally used to protect medical patients, doctors, and workers from direct and secondary radiation during diagnostic imaging in the hospitals, clinics, and dental offices. So radiation shielding garments include, I think every one of us is aware of these PPEs or garments, and these are lead-made few obstacles which will avoid direct exposure in the radiation rooms, also some cubicles with radio dense material. So radiation shielding material properties means standard lead is the heaviest, lead-based composite reduce weight by 25%, and other non-lead materials. So to avoid the radiation exposure, very important thing, principles followed in radiology is known as ALARA, A-L-A-R-A, means as low as reasonably achievable. Try to achieve least possible radiation, and for this safety, minimization of radiation dose and limiting the release of radioactive materials in the environment by employing reasonable methods, that is the principles mentioned by ALARA. So external radiation and internal radiation, the 7 principles are distributed. For external radiation, if I want to avoid radiation to enter in my body, that is, I want to shield the radiation, that means my radiation time I should reduce, increase the distance from the source of X-ray tube, and use the shielding or protective material. For internal radiation, wherever radioactive materials are there, avoid eating and drinking, and avoid also hand-to-mouth habits. For control of contamination, label the radioactive materials so that everyone will take care of while moving in that area. So when contamination occurs, it is important to promptly decontaminate the area to prevent spread of the contaminant. Airborne hazards are also important. Using fume hoods and avoiding dust, aerosol, or volatile gas production can reduce the potential for inhalation of radioactive substances. Means this dust, aerosol, and volatile gas related things, if they are there, then chances that you are inhaling the radiation material, they are higher. And of course, use of various gloves, goggles, lab coats, and other specific body organ material, means PPE kits, they are always there. And normally the thickness of the lead also matters. 20.20, 1/4 millimeter will reduce 96 1/5 millimeter of lead material in your garments or in your safety aprons or safety PPEs will reduce exposure up to 96%. Means still you will get exposed up to 4% of radiation. So duration of exposure will matter here. Then 0.35 and 0.55, if it is of 0.5 millimeter thickness, then you are protected up to 98 to 99.5% of radiation exposure. In case of thyroid cells, you should use minimum 5 millimeter thickness as it is equivalent thickness for NECA, because thyroid protection is also important for avoiding the hazardous effects. So with this background, and thankful to this Roentgen, the professor, German professor, nowadays we are in orthopedics, present orthopedics, the radiograph, these X-ray films, ultrasound, CT scan, MRI, nuclear imaging, angio, CTO or MRI, angio and PET scan. These are the radiographic methods available, of which we will discuss plain radiographic X-rays today. Why we should learn this? Because as an ortho surgeon, we cannot function without radiographs. Most of the times, we are the radiographers and we are the interpreters of those radiographs. The radiologists have shifted their focus from plain radiographs to CT, MRI, PET, and ultrasound, which are more money-making and more challenging. Conventional plain radiographs are preferred more over, especially in more expensive imaging modalities. In a country like ours, definitely radiographs are preferred. Radiographic examination is important dimension of our orthopedic care, and so it needs to be performed well so as to avoid false negatives which will affect our patient's care adversely. And that is the reason we should know radiograph picture comes after your proper clinical examination. You have reached to the clinical diagnosis, then you know what all things you want to rule out. That means, in short, this is the management's first part. History and clinical examination is absolutely important and is must. This is just supporting radiography or any investigation is a supporting tool for us. Unfortunately, we are more of technicians, less of clinicians as of now, and hence radiograph reading is also important. And we should know which radiograph to be asked, in which proper position radiograph to be taken, and whether that is correctly executed. And of course, there is a rule of two in orthopedics. Definitely some examiners will ask you what is rule of two in orthopedics. If you want to do the radiography examination, this rule of two is very important. What is this rule of two? We should always take two views of two joints at two occasions, at two different sites if warranted, and of two sides, injured and uninjured, whenever it is indicated. So two views means don't go by what we see in one view. You may be totally wrong. In other words, a patient operated elsewhere came to me post trauma 1 year after this index surgery. With this X-ray, we may tend to go for the conservative management. So take another view and then you can treat it properly. So two joints, one joint above, one joint below. Why? What is your diagnosis? Comminuted fracture of the femoral shaft. How will you manage? Someone may say nailing. I want hip joint radiograph. Yes, take. Now, are you planning to do the same? There is central fracture dislocation, there is acetabular fracture, and there is shaft fracture. Now, I will change my management plan. I would still like to go down to see the knee joint. I may be surprised there also. For example, this is another case, posterior wall with posterior hip dislocation. Clinically, patient is having trauma to the knee. I will think of other joint injured, this patella injury also. So 2 joints, one above and one below. 2 times before and after doing the close reduction. If you are doing close reduction under anesthesia, before and after doing surgery, to see whether you have addressed the reduction and surgical part adequately and satisfactorily. And when you want to conserve the injury without doing any manipulation, so immediately and sequentially every weekly for 2 to 3 weeks. Why? For example, in acute scenario, patient comes, he is having this undisplaced type of fracture, but he was not told after applying cast, come weekly. Till the time there is callus and stickiness of fracture occurs, and patient comes after 1.5 months, he will not be acceptable. And so these 2 times is important. Also 2 sides. Why? Because there is a fracture. That means there is fall on the heel. If I am taking good history, and if I know that fall from height is from significant height and on hard surface, I will not go for this. Rather, I will go for hip or spine. Because another side with particular injuries is possible of other injuries. So never ever miss specific 2 sides radiographic evaluation also. 2 sides in children. If there is subtle injury which you cannot make out, but clinically there is a tenderness, don't hesitate to take opposite and then compare. Yes, there is an injury. So to avoid these possible mistakes from our sides, we should follow the rule of 2. Now, how to read the X-ray? Plain radiographs or X-rays remain single most important investigations for diagnosis and requires systematic step-by-step and meticulous observation while reading the X-rays. The X-ray should be held in anatomical position. The ways are either go from soft tissue to bone to joint or other way around. Or other approach is see the adequacy of exposure and alignment, means hold the X-ray in anatomical position, and first impression should be whether it is adequately exposed, fill, good fill. Then go for the bones examination. Then enter in the joint, cartilage area. If in the spine, disc. If in the joints, like knee joint, meniscus. Then go the soft tissue areas, means inside out type only. So now we will start with how to, with example of bony lesion, how we should go. My job is already made easy. Majority of this class, now another 25 minutes will be actually the revision. What Menon sir is 10 commandments for reading the X-ray. So you should know the age, site, single or multiple, how bone is destroyed, what are the margins, in which way cortex is responding, what type of matrix mineralization, periosteal reaction is there, whether it is extending the soft tissue areas, and at the end, are you supposed to do some biopsy or you will not do? So these 10 points, if they are in my mind, then I will be able to read the X-ray properly. I will give due time for this. I feel this is important part, though it is repetition, because in exam, the bone tumor related area is little gray area for all postgraduates, most of the postgraduates. So though it is repetition, just try to keep your mind blank and go with these slides now. So first, to decide whether lesion is benign or malignant, we should have 5 features. Means whether it is slow or rapidly growing, how is the zone of transition, narrow or wide, cortical, whether it is destroyed or not destroyed, whether periosteal reaction is there or not, and soft tissue involvement is there or not. Along with this, also try to see the matrix, whether it is chondroid, osteoid, or mixed type. So also don't forget to check whether patient is young or elderly or adult. Which bone, long bones or central, axial or vertebral bones, and location within that bone. So now first part, age, self-explanatory slide. This first decade of life in early neonate, less than 2 years, metastatic neuroblastoma. This green color is benign. Red color is malignant. And this in between, this yellowish color is actually can be both or chances of conversion. So this slide is self-explanatory, means specific bone tumors, they are common in that specific age group mainly. So this mainly that age group is very important. Likewise, bone, simple bone cyst and aneurysmal bone cyst in second line means in first 2 decades. Focal cortical defect or fibrous cortical defect again in second and third decade. Ewing sarcoma first 2 decades. Osteosarcoma second decade. Giant cell tumor 20 to 40 years. Chondrosarcoma 30 years and above, and rest all malignant tumors commonly after 40 years of age. Location, if it is vertebra, then anterior or posterior elements. See, if it is a vertebral body, that means anterior element, possibility of osteosarcoma, chondrosarcoma. Then if marrow is affected, lymphoma, myeloma, and Ewing sarcoma. In body also hemangioma, which is a benign tumor. Eosinophilic granuloma means majority of the malignant tumors and few benign tumors in the body. In posterior elements, again same mixed picture. Osteoidostoma, osteoblastoma. Again mates, osteochondroma and aneurysmal bone cyst. These are the this is the importance of that location of the body part. In immature skeleton, epiphysis, metaphysis, or diaphysis, they are the bone tumors, giant cell and chondroblastoma in epiphyseal region. In metaphysis, aneurysmal bone cyst, simple bone cyst, chondromyxoid fibroma, fibrous cortical defect, osteoidostoma, and these cancerous tumors like osteosarcoma, chondrosarcoma, fibrosarcoma, metaphyseal zone. And in diaphysis, Ewing sarcoma, adamantiminoma, chondroma. Also, whenever you are seeing X-ray in anteroposterior field, see whether this is centrally or peripherally located lesion. Likewise, simple bone cyst, chondroma, and fibrous dysplasia, they are the central one. GCT, non-osteopathic fibroma, fibrous cortical defect, chondromyxoid fibroma, and aneurysmal bone cyst, they are the eccentric one. So, to summarize now, this is a femur, arbitrary line in adult bone of physis, so chondroblastoma in epiphyseal region. Benign infection also you should keep as a differential, and third one is a GCT. Then aneurysmal bone cyst. This green color is metaphyseal zone. This red color will be in this pink color will be diaphyseal zone. So osteochondroma, osteosarcoma, chondroma, chondrosarcoma. This pink color is this diaphyseal tumors. Osteoidostoma, fibrous dysplasia, Ewing sarcoma, non-ossifying fibroma, chondromyxoid fibroma, eosinophilic granuloma. This round circle says these are the metaphyseal zone tumors, and of course giant cell tumor. So repeatedly, multiple slides I have kept because this concept needs to be clarified very well. So once this is understood, in adult skeletal, don't say epiphyseal, say epiphyseal zone, metaphyseal zone, or diaphyseal zone. So in short, location of the lesion, what it tells, this bone tumor or bony lesion can be central, can be eccentric, can be cortical, can be on the surface of the bone cortex. So now third part in our 10 commandments is number or multiplicity of the lesions. So multiple lesions, they are there in benign conditions like fibrous dysplasia, polyostotic type, multiple enchondroma, Oleus disease, Maffucci syndrome, hemophilic pseudotumors, and malignant tumors like multiple myeloma, lymphoma, and metastasis. They are in multiple numbers. So now fourth commandment is pattern of destruction, either geographical or moth-eaten or permeative is revision slides. So Ludloff classified this geographic means continuous area bone destruction into 1A, 1B and 1C classification. So this geographic means cortical destruction is seen well circumscribed with narrow zone of transition, maybe with sclerotic margin, may not be with sclerotic margin. And this last one, C, will not be properly defined. This ill-defined margin will be there. So 1A is well-defined translucent radiolucent with sclerotic margin. For example, this is lipoma. Other examples, bone cyst and fibrous dysplasia. Another one, see here now. Well-defined, but there is no this dark black color, no sclerotic margin, like in multiple myeloma and giant cell tumor. See here now, ill-defined lytic lesion, geographical type, malignancy. Whenever this ill-defined and wide zone picture will come, always first think of malignant lesion. With very few exceptions, I will mention it subsequently or during these slides. So third one is moth eaten. Now this concept needs to be very well clear. This moth, a कीट जो है, ये पत्तों को खा जाता है. The leaf is eaten away, not in continuity, but small multiple holes made. And this appearance of the leaf is nothing but moth-eaten appearance. So areas of destruction, ragged borders implies more rapid or probable malignant type of lesion. So how it is? It looks multiple 2 to 5 millimeter size dimensions, multiple lesions, confluent lytic lesions with wide zone of transition, indistinct endosteal scalloping. How will you keep differential? It is osteosarcoma, chondrosarcoma, or fibrosarcoma. Out of these three, I will think of whenever there is moth-eaten, also Ewing sarcoma. And again, I told benign condition. Don't forget chronic osteomyelitis. So now, for patterns of bone destruction, another one is permeative type. Multiple small holes, ill-defined lesions with multiple wormholes. Means less than 1 millimeter size, uniform oval lucencies, ill-defined, rapidly destructive lesions with exuberant cortical tunneling and can be seen in eosinophilic, Ewing sarcoma, reticulum cell carcinoma, leukemia, and metastasis. Now, fifth commandment is margins of the lesion and rate of growth. So, benign lesions, sharply defined sclerotic margins, slow growth, and narrow zone of transition. We will think of benign lesions. In case of malignant, ill-defined margins, fast-growing tumor with wide zone of transition and aggressive nature. This picture will tell me about the malignant type of radiological picture. So now, sixth commandment is cortical response. Can be expanded type, means normal outline, will be violated because of endosteal scalloping and bulging or expanding of that cortical part. Scallop means like scooping out the ice cream from the ice cream vessel. How it will look? In the same way, this endosteal scalloping and erosion. So this is expanded type of GCT type of picture. Eroded means you can see the erosion of the cortex. Endosteal scalloping means multiple lesions inside, but in scallop, the dimensions remains the same. So these are the three ways. So how this response occurs? Either in trabeculosis type, scalloping type, or saucerization type in different type of lesions. So intact cortex associated with lesion suggestive of slow growth, and cortical breach and destruction suggest rapid growth. Seventh commandment is matrix. A cellular intercellular substance formed by mesenchymal cells is called matrix. Again, I am repeating. A cellular intercellular substance formed by mesenchymal cells, maybe osteoblast, chondroblast, or fibroblast, is called as matrix. And depending upon the cell of the origin of the matrix, it is either osteoid from bone forming, cartilage forming is chondroid, fibroblast, it is a fibromyxoid, that means fibrous as well as collagen type of matrix is there. And depending upon the appearance, it will be clear ground glass or cartilage is calcified type. Like this, ground glass clear, cartilaginous, and ossification, osteoid type. So clear matrix refers to a lesion which are clear or mostly clear. Radiolucent lesion with few undestroyed trabeculae is considered to have clear matrix. Osseous matrix, like in myositis ossificans and osteosarcoma, where interlacing radiodense struts in a laminar fashion, they are there, like this osteogenic sarcoma. So patterns of mineralization, they are solid, osseous. Now we are seeing they are solid type, cloud-like, or ivory type. In case of cartilaginous tumors, they are stipple, flocculent, or ring and arc pattern, or popcorn type pattern. So ivory dense in osteoid chondroid pattern, we call it as a flocculent or ring-like calcifications. Now, eighth commandment is periosteal reaction, periosteum. Highly vascular, outer fibrous and inner cambium layer. Sharpie's fiber are perpendicularly oriented collagen fibers that attach periosteum to underlying surface. And hence periosteal reaction can be of two types. Periosteum is either elevated by addition of the bone or it is removed by subperiosteal resorption. So solid reaction is either this is whenever this is bone forming reaction is there, solid, lamellated, is spiculated, this type of reaction is there. So when we will expect the periosteal reaction, it takes at least 10 to 21 days. It is indicator of biological activities going on, response of the body. More interrupted or complex pattern of these periosteal reactions suggests aggressive lesion. And this lesion, periosteal reaction, is again of continuous spiculated and interrupted type with subtypes. So this continuous type of periosteal reaction, even if there is endosteal scalloping and some bulging type of area of that bony lesion is shell type, solid type like is osteoid osteoma, undulating type like in osteomyelitis, and lamellated type like in chronic osteomyelitis or in the Ewing sarcoma. So smooth cell, when this smooth type appearance we will be there, it will be in giant cell carcinoma, and in other conditions like non-ossifying fibroma, it will be low lobulated and rigid one. So solid type means, as I have told you, ossification of multiple layers of periosteal bone response to slow growing region. Example is osteoid osteoma, chronic osteomyelitis for the undulating type, and
Gopal, I think so this problem.
Sharpie's fibers are stretched by cellular invasion and new bone is laid along forming spicules. Spicules are largest at the epicenter of the lesion. The spicules can be parallel, hair-round end appearance. Divergent, we call it a sunburst appearance. Parallel or sloping, we call it as a lamellar or velvet type appearance. For example, in skull, calvarium, thalassemia, we may have this hair-round end appearance. Chronic anemias, Ewing sarcoma, osteogenic sarcoma, sunburst type, or Ewing sarcoma, we will have this velvet type. So interrupted, again aggressive type. Periosteum is elevated by bone tumor, blood pus disrupted by bone tumor infiltration. So three types: Codman triangle, buttress, and truncated, as clearly understood with this figure. They are the complex type. Now, ninth commandment is always see the soft tissues. So, soft tissue extension likely to be malignant like metastasis or sarcomas. Exceptions are giant cell tumor and simple bone cyst. Here, best use of MRI for next means better understanding is advisable. So on X-rays, how will you differentiate? Difference between benign and malignant is assessed by evaluating the association between adjacent soft tissue planes. For example, if fat plane is blur, which will suggest that tumor cells have either infiltrated or there is an infection. Displaced fat plane likely to be benign lesion, well circumscribed and slow growing like organized hematoma or abscess. So soft tissue findings helping in differentials. They are if there is phlebolith, think of hemangioma. Fat density on a radiology X-ray, think of lipoma. Punctate clumps of radio density near a joint along with the tendons, think of synovial sarcoma. But amorphous radio density with areas of bone formation, think of either myositis ossificans or parosteal osteogenic sarcoma. And here, differentiating point is important. In myositis ossificans, maturations is from periphery to center, and which is reverse in parosteal osteogenic sarcoma. So last now, point not to be missed is think of if you feel like it is a focal fibrous cortical defect or non-ossified fibroma or this periosteal desmoid or fibrous dysplasia or myositis ossificans, which are a tumor or tumor-like lesions. And in case of non-neoplastic conditions, if picture is there, healing, avulsion fracture, bone infarct, inostosis or bone island, hemophilic pseudotumors like conditions, do not do biopsy. That means these are the touch me not lesions. So in summary, benign bone lesions, they are well-defined sclerotic, well-defined with sclerotic borders, geographical type of pattern of destruction, have continuous solid type of periosteal reaction, and no soft tissue infiltration with some exceptions I already mentioned, like simple bone cyst. In case of malignant bone lesions, poorly defined borders, wide zone of transition, moth-eaten or permittive type of pattern, interrupted type of periosteal reaction with soft tissue infiltration, always think of malignant type of lesions while telling the differential or diagnosis in examination. So with this, I have completed how to read the X-ray or which 10 important points we should see. Now we will go ahead bit fast with this malignant bone tumors first. So osteosarcoma, as we know, age is 10 to 20 years or 10 to 25 years is a metaphyseal affected region with sunburst or sunray periosteal response, cortical disruption with soft tissue mass formation. It may be sclerotic, may be lytic, or may be mixed. But remember, ghost cortex is preserved. And this is the example of osteogenic sarcoma radiological picture. Now see here. We will first see good exposed radiograph of knee, anteroposterior and lateral view. We in a mature skeleton means I have told age, I have told the site, location in the bone, metaphyseal, parosteal means around the periosteum, on the surface of the periosteum, blastic type activity pattern, geographical lesion, large continuous lesion with well-defined margins, no bony changes, is a parosteal osteogenic sarcoma. Now see here, this is the lesion, this is the lesion. Now with me start. Well exposed radiograph, anteroposterior and lateral view of the femur, including the knee, in a mature skeleton, diaphyseal region, these 5 differentials you should remember. Cortical type of site is cortical type, mixed lytic and blastic, ill-defined borders. See a Codman's triangle is there. Cortex thin from outside. periosteal reaction, this Codman triangle is there. These are the malignant features, ill-defined. So my diagnosis will be periosteal osteogenic sarcoma. See here now, another type of, this is the lesion, if you can see my cursor. So this is well exposed anterior-posterior view of knee in a mature skeleton, metaphyseal zone, lytic type of lesion, geographical type of pattern, well-defined with non-sclerotic rim, thinned out cortex, breached cortex, periosteal reaction with Codman's triangle, lamellated type pattern here, malignant features, and without any doubt, I will say telangiectatic osteogenic sarcoma. So now, quickly metaphyseal. Now, all these points, you know, important points. I have to cover a lot of topic. So I will just run through now. Mixed sclerotic lytic, sunburst appearance, wide zone of transition, ghost cortex preserved is a osteosarcoma. Now, second tumor, chondrosarcoma. Chondro means cartilage origin. Chondroblast and collagenoblasts in etiology produce cartilage and collagen. Third most common malignant bone tumor. So in descending order, osteogenic sarcoma, multiple myeloma, and this chondrosarcoma. They are the common these malignant tumors. They are secondary to either enchondroma, osteochondroma, chondromyxoid fibroma, or chondroblastoma. Means benign cartilaginous tumors converting themselves into, proliferating themselves, changing themselves into these carcinomatous. So now central lesion, epicenter is intramedullary. Peripheral epicenter is at the bone surface, depends on the lesion, that type. So central large osteolytic lesion with endosteal reaction. Matrix mineralization is floppy or popcorn type, means stippled nodular or rings and arc-like, and is a chondrosarcoma. So here again, mature bone confines to the bone-only tumor, lytic and sclerotic picture, fluffy popcorn calcification, cortical erosion. Another examples of other two sites is a chondrosarcoma. Third tumor, most common between 10 to 32nd and third decade, mimics infection. Remember, Ewing's sarcoma mimics infection. Diaphyseal permeative lesion, femur tibia fibula commonest, onion skin periosteal response, most common primary malignant bone tumor to metastasize to bone, and differential diagnosis always remember the chronic osteomyelitis. So now onion peel appearance means what? Central lesion with laid out layers of the lesion. So diaphyseal zone, permeative type, wide zone of transition, saucerization features are there. What is saucerization? Tumor grows through Haversian system and present subperiosteally. Marginal scalloping effect on the surface is seen. Periosteal reaction is multilamellar. We can call it as onion peel. Codman triangle is there. If it is breached, aggressive, recurrent, metastatic, and it can have skip lesions. Remember, it can be Ewing's sarcoma. Now, immature skeleton, diaphyseal, lamellar type reaction, cortical thickening, medulla is normal. Diagnosis, Ewing's sarcoma. Sorry for this poor quality of X-ray. Now, fourth tumor, second most common hematological malignancy is multiple myeloma. There is clonal proliferation of plasma cells which produce excessive amount of monoclonal IgG, which is detected in serum and urine. Age is more than 40 years with male predominance. Uniform sized, multiple punched out lytic lesions without sclerotic rim in the skull will be the picture of multiple myeloma, which is clearly seen in this image. Wherever you will find here, please think of, you may be asked in the exam, skeletal survey, what all you will do? Sir, I will do skull, cervical, thoracic, lumbosacral spine, X-ray chest, PBH, and long bones, proximal anteroposterior view. This much you should tell. Now lytic lesion with permeative pattern of bone destruction, long bones, discrete small lytic lesions up to 1 millimeter size, moth-eaten pattern of cortical destruction, pathological fractures, trivial trauma can cause in multiple myeloma. So clinical features of multiple myeloma: infiltrate normal marrow and it hampers myelopiosis. So bone marrow function is affected means anemia. WBC count affected means infection leading to because of cytopenia, renal insufficiency, hypercalcemia due to activation of osteoclast, and demineralization of the bones leading to fractures. So now read this radiograph. This is the metastasis. So this is the fifth tumor. With this, we completed these tumors, malignant tumors. Now I will run fast with benign bone tumors. First one is inostosis, accidental finding. Bohol densely sclerotic intramedullary lesion aligned along the long axis of the trabeculae. Differential is osteoblastic metastasis. Bone scan is of no use. MRI, hypointense signal on T1 and T2 and this is the inostosis. Second common is osteoblastoma, closely related to osteoid osteoma. These are the bone forming tumors, osteoid forming tumors, osteoblastic tumors. So lesion is less than 2 centimeters in size. Most common is posterior elements of spine, can be seen in tumor or talus. Lytic type destruction of overlying cortex is the feature. So now see here, C1 vertebra, posterior element, lateral view of the cervical spine, mature skeleton, posterior arch of C1, well-defined geographic lesion with sclerotic rim, means 1A of geographical type lesion. Cortex is expanded, no periosteal reaction, osteoblastoma. Now third tumor is osteoma. Here most common, this is benign bone tumor of membranous bone or hematoma. Most common site here, flat bones, usually asymptomatic. You can see here. So X-ray will tell well circumcised lesion arising from cortex and protrudes from the surface. Bone and osteoma are of same density is important feature. And when it is associated with colonic polyposis, we call it as a Gardner syndrome. So this picture is self-explanatory and our diagnosis is osteoma, third tumor. So osteoid osteoma is a Wuhan type osteoid plus Wuhan bone. Dimension less than 1.5 centimeters. Age group second to third decade. Pain and tenderness in the lesion, especially night, dramatically getting relieved with aspirin. Most common site around femur and tibia. Posterior elements of spine also there. Then skull, mandible, ribs, and ischium. So now, again, well exposed, view, diaphyseal, cortical site, blastic with well-defined lytic area in the center, that is nidus in the center, with cortical hyperostosis, no periosteal reaction. History will tell you the age and these pain response to NSAIDs. Diagnosis osteoid osteoma. Now cartilage forming tumor is osteochondroma or exostosis. Is the most common of all primary tumors, and it starts at the physeal level. There is a differential growth. This cartilaginous cap is carried and it grows away from the from the growing end. It has a stalk. If flare out from the bone surface, could be sessile or pedunculated. Medulla of the bone is in continuation with the stalk in the tumor. This is the important finding of this osteochondroma. Always grows away from the joint. Never has structures attached to it. This tumor doesn't have any structures attached to it. Is important. So whatever symptoms will be there, they will be purely due to pressure syndrome. There is a fracture of the stalk occurs, pain will start. Now next is enchondroma, another the continued growth of residual benign rest of cartilage displaced from growth plate in the medullary cavity of the small tubular bones of the hand and feet, usually solitary type. You can see it here. X-ray picture will show oval, geographical destruction with lobulated or expansile contour with endosteal scalloping, ground glass matrix, rings and arc appearance, no periosteal reactions, is enchondroma. Now chondroblastoma, see the location, eccentric medullary epiphyseal lesion with in a growth plate region, means cartilaginous tumor. Second decade, 2/3 of the cases, epiphyses around the knees. Well-defined sclerotic margin with intact scallop cortical borders, periostitis of adjacent metaphyses. Differentials are avascular necrosis in femoral head, giant cell tumor, chondromyxoid fibroma, and enchondroma. Now see here, well exposed, immature skeleton, epiphyseal, lytic, geographic lesion, very well defined with non-sclerotic rim, no thinning of the cortex, no thinning or breach, no periosteal reaction. This is the tumor area, is a chondroblastoma. So chondromyxoid fibroma, second and third decade, rare tumor, eccentric, metaphyseal, mainly in long bones. X-ray will show expansile void lesion with lucent, translucent, radiolucent. Long axis of the lesion is parallel with the long axis of the bone. Geographic type of pattern with scalloped margins and expanded cell. Stipple calcification with tumor in advanced cases. No periosteal reaction. May recur even with proper curettage with differentials of simple bone cyst, aneurysmal bone cyst, non-occipying fibroma, fibrous dysplasia, and enchondroma. So now read the X-ray. Well exposed view, mature skeleton. Site is epiphyseal region, expansile, void, geographical, scalloped margins, radiolucent center, no periosteal reaction, chondromyxoid fibroma. Now, last two, benign tumors, fibrous cortical defect and non-ossifying fibroma. Benign fibrous lesion, eccentric type in non-ossifying fibroma, focal cortical defect, superficially affects the cortex. Around the knee joint, histopathological examination is diagnostic, suggestive of fibrous tissue, xanthoma cells and giant cells. X-rays, well marginated, eccentric, lytic with sclerotic margin. May appear multiloculated due to corrugations. Differentials are bone cyst, aneurysmal bone cyst, fibrous dysplasia, and chondromyxoid fibroma. Now read the X-ray. This is the lesion, well exposed. Ankle joint with distal tibia fibula, mature skeleton, metaphyseal, eccentric, cortical, well-defined lytic with sclerotic rim, geographical region, lesion, cortex thinning, no periosteal reaction, fibrous cortical defect. Now, again, well exposed. The same picture will be there. The positive finding is metaphysio-diaphyseal junction, lytic lesion with sclerotic rim, single eccentric, no periosteal reaction, non-ossifying fibroma. Next one in the queue is fibrous origin. Normal means fibrous dysplasia. I will spend few minutes here because clinically and examination wise also they are, radiological examination wise are important. Normal bone undergoes physiological resorption but replaced by abnormal proliferation of isomorphic fibrous tissue of spindle cells and poorly formed bony trabeculae of Owen bone. Can occur in one bone, many bones on one side, or may be associated with endocrine. So monostotic fibrous dysplasia is more common, 70% type. Polyostotic usually unilateral limb bones affected. So here radiological pictures are affected bones are well expanded, well circumscribed, lytic and ground glass appearance, metaphyseal or diaphyseal zone, multiloculated appearance, surrounded by thick layer of reactive sclerotic bone called as a rind sign, no periosteal reaction, bowing or pathological fracture possible. In polyostotic form, multiple bones are affected of one side. These are the radiographs, lesions. So, age group is about 40 years for monostotic, polyostotic little less, and with female preponderance in polyostotic with endocrine abnormality in still younger patients. So monostotic, these are again the repetitive slides. So I'm just going to skip these slides. Now read this. Just go with the slide. Fibrous dysplasia. One more. Here, AP view. This deformity is important. All other, this is Shepard-Crook deformity. Now, something about this Shepard-Crook. Shepard-Crook is a long and sturdy stick with a hook at one end, often with point flayed outwards. Used by shepherds to manage and sometimes catch the ships. In addition, the crook may aid in defending against attackers by the predators. When traversing through rough terrain, crook is used as an aid to balance also. In India, the shepherd community called the Dhangar community, they use long bamboo stick and one sickle or koita that is attached at one end is nothing but the shepherd's crook only. In addition, they use it to cut the leafy small branches of the trees or shrubs to the these goats and sheep. Shepard-Crook deformity refers to a distinctive abnormal contour of proximal femur in the setting of fibrous dysplasia. The decreasing neck shaft angle, that is coxa vara, less than 120 degrees and rounded appearance as the bone deform resembles as that of a staff with the C-shape end carried by shepherd. The staff means the sturdy shepherd. The staff is nothing but the stick, sturdy stick part of that long 6 feet long part of that is called as stick, and this is the reference in the literature. So fibrous dysplasia in extremities, these are various pictures. I think differentials of fibrous dysplasia in monostotic type, we should think of non-ossifying fibroma, simple bone cyst, giant cell tumor, enchondroma, and eosinophilic granuloma. In polyostotic, of course, Paget disease, neurofibromatosis, hyperparathyroidism, and osteofibrous dysplasia. Non-specified bone lesions now. Third part in bone tumors, non-specified bone tumors, aneurysmal bone cyst, simple bone cyst, and giant cell tumor. I'm going to discuss this aneurysmal bone cyst, expansile metaphyseal lesion, ballooning, fine septations, fluid levels. So intraosseous AV malformation is there, honeycomb spaces filled with blood products named because of radiological appearance. It has nothing to do with histopathological findings. Common age group is second and third decade. Female preponderance. So in short, it is purely lytic, eccentric, expansile lesion that sharply demarcated from adjacent normal bone, lacks peripheral sclerosis, uneven scalloping of endosteum gives trabeculated appearance. Extracortical compartment has an intact thin subperiosteal reactive bone cell. On MRI, fluid levels seen. So macroscopic and microscopic. In microscopy, septa will be there. In macroscopically, here it is well demarcated surrounding bone, bogey, hemorrhagic, and expansile mass. Variably sized blood-filled cavities are present, and microscopically low power appearance of variable sized blood-filled spaces separated by cellular septi containing spindle cells, histiocytes, osteoclasts, reactive osteoblasts producing trabecular Owen bone. So radiologically, metaphysis is affected. Posterior elements of vertebrae in the immature skeleton. Lesion is closely associated associated with physis. Primary aneurysmal bone cyst is rare in skeletally mature skeleton. So now, metaphyseal, eccentric, expansile, at least radiographically, multiple fine safety, sharply bulging scallop, honeycombed appearance or soap bubble appearance, blown out appearance, immature skeleton, aneurysmal bone cyst. So now we'll go for simple bone cyst. That is unicameral bone cyst. 3% of all primary tumors, second and third decade, asymptomatic until pathological fibrer, this pathological fracture, metaphyseal zone, commonly in femur and humerus, fluid cavities. So simple means geographic cystic lucency, broad at metaphyseal end and narrow at diaphyseal side, so called appears as a truncated cone appearance, pseudo-loculated appearance with incomplete septic formation, grows away from the physis, fallen leaf or floating fragment sign is pathognomonic, hinged fragment. Whenever this fragment is attached at one end and other sides, it's free. So with mobility at this side, this moves. So it is called hinge fragment sign also. Expansion never exceeds the width of physis is very important when we say simple bone cyst. Simple, this fallen leaf sign actually is the pathognomonic of the unique APC. So read this X-ray. Simple bone cyst. So remember, giant cell tumor. These 5 is, you must remember, eccentric, expansile, epiphyseal, X cell crackling on examination, excision is the treatment. So these 5 is in 20 to 40 year age group. Immature skeleton, diaphyseal zone here. If I think of femur, then lytic type, central geographical lesion, well-defined lesion, non-sclerotic rim, thinned out cortex with periosteal reaction is a eosinophilic granuloma. Typical site, diaphyseal tumor. So mature skeleton, no soft tissue swelling, pan-diaphyseal, anterior bowing of tibia, cortical changes, medullary changes. This picture is soft tissue, shadow is important. It is not a bony, but it is a. So now, metabolic bone disease. We have completed with hyperparathyroidism. This is important slide. This appears in human body. Decreased calcium, increased phosphorus, decreased calcitriol, that is vitamin D, will stimulate the parathyroid hormones and will reverse the picture, increase the calcium, decrease the phosphorus with signs, symptoms of hyperparathyroidism. So increased parathyroid hormone will act on bone, on kidney and on intestine. This parathyroid hormone, when it acts on the intestines, increases the vitamin D metabolism by also increase the calcium absorption from the intestine, thereby calcium level is increased. In bone, increases both by osteoclastic activity, calcium and phosphorus level. But kidneys, this calcium phosphorus increased while moving through the blood, goes to the kidneys, and here potassium is thrown out and calcium is reabsorbed, thereby increased calcium, decreased phosphorus, responsible for these parathyroid related problems. What they? Because of osteoclastic activity, there will be bone resorption replaced by fibrous tissue, and which will cause decreased bone density, brown tumor, or subperiosteal bone resorption related main 4 radiological things. So with this background, here is the picture. Patient presents with increased calcium, decreased phosphorus in hyperparathyroid with bony pains, renal stones, and if other MEN syndrome is there, then psychic moans and other things. So mainly kidney related and bone related symptoms you will find radiologically: bone resorption, brown tumor formation, or osteosclerosis and chondrocalcinosis will be the pictures in the radiological findings. So here comes bone resorption is important point in this slide. This radial part of the middle phalanges of index and middle finger, there is bone resorption. Loss of cortical outline around the tups leading to mesh-like or bone appearance. Also seen other tibia, femur or humerus. So normally what happens? There is a well distinct inner and outer table of the skull. But whenever there is hyperparathyroidism, the osteoclastic activity dissects through these inner and outer tables and they cause stippled, mottled and granular appearance type, which loses clear distinction between inner and outer table. See on left side, called as salt and pepper appearance of the skull is mainly because of bone resorption. So next is bone, this osteoclastoma or brown tumor formation. So there is osteoclastic activity will lead to extensive bone resorption, especially in primary type of hyperparathyroidism. So here locally bone is replaced by vascular fibrous tissue, osteitis fibrosa cystica, which contains giant cells, necrous and hemorrhagic liquefying material, is eccentric, cortical, expansile, lytic, well marginated lesion with endosteal scalloping and no periosteal reaction. When extends more than 2/3 of the diaphysis, occurs pathological fracture, should differentiate from metastasis. Now, Rugger Jersey spine, these alternate dark and normal, this stripe type appearance in the vertebra. End plates, they are radiodense compared to other part. So osteosclerosis, especially in chronic kidney disease, secondary type of hyperparathyroidism, there is osteoblastic activity also in addition to osteoclastic activity of parathyroid hormone. And what they do, difference in density of normal mineralization, mineralized bone and newly formed unmineralized bone, that is newly formed unmineralized bone, that is osteoid, is at vertebral end plates. So this gives appearance of stripes and hence the name Rugger Jersey. Jersey, this is Jersey. Rugger comes from where? Comes from here. Rugby teams, this Jersey is universally having stripes of any country in the world. So because of this Rugger means rugby, jersey, pattern, appearance of these vertebrae. So what is this Rugger Jersey in history? When I peeped, it describes a prominent end plate densities at multiple contiguous vertebral levels to produce alternating sclerotic, lucent, sclerotic appearance, which mimics the horizontal stripes of the rugby jersey, hence the name Rugger Jersey spine. So to summarize this hyperparathyroidism, there is subperiosteal resorption in the hands, pepper salt appearance in the skull, brown tumor formation, Rugger Jersey appearance. These are the pictures. Now in rickets and osteomalacia, problem is with abnormal vitamin D metabolism. So what happens normally? Sunlight, 7-dehydrocholesterol in the skin converts into cholecalciferol, goes, and also from diet, it goes to the liver and first hydroxylation, 25 cholecalciferol occurs. It causes osteoclastic intestine of the calcium. So net result is both calcium and phosphates. They are increased from various sources in the rickets. So anything, this is normal. Anything abnormal happens here,
Hello. Gopal.
He is not audible.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, sir. I was disconnected due to net problem. I'm sorry. Is the screen audio visible, sir?
Yeah,
Yes,
visible.
yes.
Okay, sir. So we were here. So the same thing, whatever I explained is here. The vitamin T, how it increases absorption from the intestine of calcium. On kidney, it causes increased reabsorption of again calcium from bone remodeling, and parathyroid hormone production is decreased when vitamin D is working well. So whenever there is a problem, there will be at this level, either from diet or improper exposure or some disease of the malabsorption syndrome type or liver type, some kidney disorder, or patient on some anticonvulsant type drug therapy. Another type is secondary to phosphate loss due to various reasons, either vitamin D resistant rickets or renal tubular acidosis or other conditions, and miscellaneously like metaphyseal chondrodysplasia and hypophosphatemia. So rickets, alkaline phosphatase increase. This is theoretical part. I think students can go through it. The pictures are basically widening of the growth plates, irregular margins at the metaphyses. There is cupping, fraying in the metaphyseal region. So in radiology, you should be able to image your skeleton, expanded ends, flaring, cupping, fraying of metaphyses, widened growth plates, and ricket formation. So radiological signs, they signs of healing occur. They start after 2 to 3 weeks of adequate therapy, and for complete reversal, it requires a couple of months. So resurgence of dense zone of provisional calcification, we should see the first evidence of healing as a resurgence of dense of provisional calcification. Increased cupping, recalcification, and subperiosteal osteoid forming a thick opaque along with the sap. Epiphyseal ossification center becomes sharply defined. So this is nothing but now image widened distal ends, resolving flaring of the metaphyses, distinct zone of provisional calcification. So history you have already taken. He is taking some treatment. He has some problems. With this history and with this radiological picture, you can say it's a healing ricket. So various radiographs of these rickets. Now, third important and less known topic is scurvy. Quickly, it is because of vitamin C deficiency, which acts as a cofactor, which is very essential in collagen formation, essential element in manufacturing the cartilage matrix. So its deficiency will reduce the osteoblastic activity, cellular content in the bone, and mineralization continues to be, means mineralization is normal, osteoblastic activity is affected. These two words you should be remembering. And in rickets, there is defective mineralization. So rickets, defect in mineralization, scurvy, mineralization is normal. These two important points. What is pathophysiology? Formation of intracellular cement substance in connective tissues, bones and dentin is defective, resulting weakened capillaries, thereby bleeding tendency is increased. Subsequent hemorrhages occur. So hemorrhaging is a hallmarking feature of scurvy and can occur in any organ. So osteo, what we will see on radiograph, suppressed blastic activity and normal osteoclastic activity will cause generalized decrease in bone density, thinning of the cortex, and loss of trabecular definitions. So dense zone of provisional calcification, that is white line of Frankel here at growing metaphysis. Although the cartilage of proliferation is decreased, mineralization is normal and unimpaired. Due to normal mineralization, zone of provisional calcification becomes wide and dense. Means why this Frankel line is because of this. So enhancement of dense metaphyseal zone of calcified cartilage occurs owing to delayed conversion into bone. So ring epiphysis, that is Wimberger sign. 4 things you must remember. One is this Wimberger sign. Second is this is Pelkan spur. this is Frenkel's line, and this scorbutic zone. These are the 4 radiographic findings you must see. So what is this Wimberger sign? The epiphyseal margin of epiphyseal appears dense, whereas central lucency and surrounded by a rim of sclerosis. In physis is Wimberger sign. Irregularity of metaphyseal margin frequently occurs secondary to infarctions of epiphyseal-metaphyseal junction, that is cornal angle sign or Pelkan spur. These are bony protuberances, periosteal elevation occurring at the metaphyseal margin lead to spur formation at right angles away from the shaft of the axis. Here, this is the Pelkan spur. So here again, clear picture. This is scorbutic zone, also called as Trümmerfeld zone. This is so in scurvy, Wimberger sign, white line of Frenkel, Pelkan spur, scorbutic zone, and subperiosteal hemorrhage. These are, if you are able to find these things, you will be able to read it without any failure. So how Wimberger's sign appears? Epiphysis is small, sharply marginated by sclerotic rim with central portion radiolucent due to decreased cartilage proliferation, decreased osteoblastic activity, and unimpaired mineralization forming sclerosis. This is the pathophysiology behind it. So zone of provisional calcification extends beyond margin of metaphysis, resulting in periosteal elevation and marginal spur formation. These bony protuberances occur at metaphyseal margins, extend at right angles away from the shaft. This Pelkan spur, I think repeatedly I have covered this. This acromegaly and fluorosis. This is not practically that much important. So now my marathon of last 10 minutes, inflammatory arthritis. Just look into the picture. Normally, whenever there is osteoarthritis, single compartment, uneven space affected. But see here, uniform destruction of joint space, rheumatoid arthritis. First thing you must remember. Then remember these pink areas, the most common areas where rheumatoid arthritis affects PIP, MCP joints and major joints. DIP joints are spared in rheumatoid. These are the deformities of neglected with periarticular osteopenia and porosis and equal bone space affected. Now psoriatic arthropathy. Remember, this distal interphalangeal joint is affected. See on right side, penicillin cup. These 2 things you should remember. Asymmetric asymmetric type, oligo or monoarticular arthritis. DIP joint is prominently affected. Penicillin cup deformity. I think with history and extensor aspects of elbows, some Haberden's nodes, and some clinical findings from history with penicillin cup finding in the radiograph is not a big deal to diagnose this psoriatic arthropathy. And these are the commonly affected areas of joints in psoriatic arthropathy. Now, another one seronegative is the fusion of the joints. Enthesis means these 2 bones in between spaces, the ligaments are converted into calcified masses, is a bamboo spine without saying angstpond. And here comes completion of our today's class. Now just student, you learn another 5 minutes before Kalra sir's this petrol finishing point. I will finish now another slides. So infection. What is this? Sequestrum. So you should know types of sequestra. Ring sequestrum in amputation stump or at Steinman pin site. Tubular or diaphyseal sequestrum in acute pyogenic osteomyelitis, neglected treatment in children. Ivory type in syphilis, fine sandy in viral osteomyelitis course, sandy in central means feathery or flake sequestrum in TB, kissing in TB in vertebra, buttonhole sequestrum after radiation therapy, Bombay or black sequestrum. So you should know these theoretical parts. This is subacute osteomyelitis, Brodie's abscess. What is this? Some black shadow, rapidly increasing. Gas shadow, gas gangrene. Now quickly, just diagnosis. Posterior hip dislocation, anterior hip dislocation, central hip dislocation, anteromedial knee dislocation, patella dislocation. See here, ankle dislocation, posterior. See here, posteriorly sublux joint, subtalar joint. See here, subtalar joint and talonavicular joint dislocation. Here, talus and navicular, and here, talus from calcaneum. Anterior shoulder dislocation, posterior shoulder dislocation, posterior elbow dislocation. Here, Montesia fracture dislocation, Galeazzi fracture dislocation. So, osteoarthritis, avian, again avian, secondary OA. See here, Perthes. Sir, 5 minutes, I'll finish. Kohler's disease, navicular bone, Blount's disease. See here, pathology, SCAFI, slip capital. See here, multiple loose bodies, bony ankylosis. See how this navicular is got avascularized, Kohler's disease. When this occurs at the head of the second metatarsal, we call it as a Freiberg's disease. When this avian of physis in immature skeleton of calcaneum occurs, we call Sievert's disease. Osgood-Schroeder in children. So congenital disorders, DDH, rocker bottom foot or vertical talus, congenital vertical talus. This talus should be aligned with this first metatarsal. Congenital proximal radioulnar synostosis and PFFD, proximal focal femoral deficit. Sir, Blount's and Genuvarum deformity, osteogenesis imperfecta, again treated with telescopic nail. Tarsal coalition, connection, bony collections between the tarsal bones. Some congenital radial carpal hand, hallux valgus. See this deformity in all three planes. And this important picture which I got from Syria, second last slide, that bullet in the vertebral canal. So friends, don't be afraid of exam. If you have read well, behave like elephant. In Hindi, there is a saying, Hathi chale bajar, kutte bhonke hajar. Be that in your attitude. And this is my favorite signature slide in every class of UG or PG. Never ever give up. Thank you very much. Sir, in time, I have